Hi everybody, my name is Andrew. As some of you may know, and as others may not care, Phineas and Ferb is one of my favorite shows of all time. I fell in love with the show sometime around 2009, and have pretty much been one of its biggest fans since. And what's not to love about a show like this? The characters are all wonderful, relatable, and lovable. The episodes are stock full of great jokes and humor, the tone is just amazing, and the music is magnificent. It's a show that not only works for kids, but adults too. They can sit down and laugh along and sing along to any of the 450 plus songs this show has produced. I'm not kidding. 450 songs. The show came to an end on June 12, 2015, when its series finale, Last Day of Summer, simulcasted on both Disney Channel and Disney XD, which was a first for the series, by the way. There was also a spin-off episode called The Outta Files that aired in November of that year that was meant to serve as a pilot for a potential spin-off, but according to one of the creators, Jeff Swampy Marsh, the series was never picked up by Disney. And ever since the show came to an end, I've been kind of going through, I guess, what you would call an existential crisis. I've struggled to kind of move past it, but then I realized, just because they're not doing more episodes, right now at least, doesn't mean I have to let it slip from my memories. So, I decided, what better way to truly honor my favorite show than to actually talk about my favorite show? So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Welcome, friends, to the first ever installment of every episode of Phineas and Ferb Reviewed. The idea came to me after watching Pie Guy Rules' every episode of SpongeBob Reviewed videos series. So, no, I'm not about to start claiming that this is my own unique idea. Not in the least. But more to the point, it helped give me a template as to how I wanted to do this particular review series, how I wanted to present it. There is one specific change, though. For those of you familiar with that review series, it's not going to be a carbon copy of it. There is one significant change. And that changes how I review the episodes. Instead of a generic phrase that indicates what I think of the episode, I'm using a star rating, and here's how it breaks down. I'm rating each episode from 0 stars to 6 stars. Why 6? Well, I'll get to that. So if an episode receives 0 stars, that means the episode was completely irredeemable, that there was absolutely nothing that I could point to in it that I could say I liked or thought was entertaining. A 1-star rating means that it's pretty much a bad episode where the vast majority of it either upset, infuriated, or just bored me. A 2-star rating is the equivalent of a meh episode. Not really good, but still some stuff I could say I enjoyed in it. A 3-star rating is basically good. I suppose for the purposes of review, you could consider it average. But really, when you think about it, the standards for this show are so high that a good episode here could be a great episode in a lesser show. A 4-star rating is a great episode filled with a lot of laughs or great plot points or stories. A 5-star rating is quote-unquote amazing for the purposes of this review, where the story was really truly engaging or special, or the jokes were just so well put together and so well told that I couldn't stop laughing most of the time. And now here comes the fun part, the 6-star rating. Any episode that I give 6 stars in this review series is one that I consider truly special. Any episode, in my opinion, that I give 6 stars to is what I consider a classic for this series. Now, I'll be reviewing this series in production order rather than broadcast order because, quite frankly, the broadcast schedule at times for this series was completely erratic and illogical.
Space is warped and time is bendable.
And that's more Disney's fault than the show's fault. Now, each slide contains the episode title, a brief summary of the episode, the production code in the top left corner, the broadcast number, and the episode's premiere dates on certain channels in the upper right corner. A fun fact or two about the episode I found fascinating or fun, some of my favorite parts of the episode, whatever meaningful songs played, and a funny and or memorable quote from the episode. Now, if I do have any information in this video that is incorrect, please do not hesitate to let me know. I am trying to be as accurate as possible, but sometimes mistakes do slip through the cracks. I must emphasize once again that this is entirely my own opinion. If you disagree with my ratings or my reasoning, that's perfectly fine, as long as you're polite about it. And without further ado, let's finally get into this. Episode 101A, Rollercoaster. Phineas and Ferb build a roller coaster. Dr. Doofenshmirtz plots to reverse the Earth's rotation. So this is the first episode of the series after the unaired pilot that made its way onto the Fast and the Phineas DVD. What I noticed right away was the difference in the voices, and I don't mean that they have different voice actors. Oh no, these are all the same people from here throughout the series finale, but it is amazing what 10 years can do. Phineas' voice, especially now, is jarring to hear again. Everyone else sounds mostly the same with the exception of Isabella, who sounds noticeably lower in the first season compared to the last season where she's much higher in pitch. And Doofenshmirtz, who, for lack of a better term, here is much less gravelly, I guess. Now, my favorite part of the episode was literally one specific line, when Doofenshmirtz's tinfoil plan fails and he delivers the line, "Well, that didn't work." The delivery of that one line had me rolling on the floor laughing. All it takes is the right writing and directing to make something like that amazing. While nothing in this episode truly stands out in my opinion, and while I don't consider this episode to be a classic, it is still memorable, and to me it does still hold up pretty well. It's still an episode I can go back to and enjoy because it brings back fond memories of the show. Honestly, the only thing that truly does stand out is that there are no songs. Yeah, this is one of the few episodes of the entire series that does not have a song in it. Go figure. I was debating whether to give this a 3-star or 4-star rating, but after a lot of deliberation, I think this episode deserves a 4-star rating. It's a good pilot episode that really sets the tone for the rest of the series. And that it does get overlooked by many later episodes is more of a testament to the quality of the series than the quality of this episode. It's still really enjoyable. Episode 101B, Candace loses her head. Phineas and Ferb remodel Mount Rushmore for Candace's birthday. Dr. Doofenshmirtz plots to tunnel to China. So, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, this episode is a bit forgettable for me. There's nothing really wrong with it, but it doesn't jump out to me and wow me like later episodes would. Now, I do really like Candace's reaction to the remodeled Mount Rushmore. It's a nice middle ground of genuine sincerity and over-the-top corny. I just love it. And the Phineas and Ferb stuff isn't bad by any stretch. It does have a cool montage, and the inclusion of Isabella made me laugh. And I guess the Doofenshmirtz and Perry parts are sort of entertaining. But when you think about it, it's just a generic plan to dig a hole to China. There's not really much more to it than that. It's just a plan to dig to China. It's not that interesting, but they do squeeze in some funny lines and moments. This one gets 3 stars. Like I said, there's nothing technically wrong with it, but when compared to so many other great episodes, this one just gets lost in the shuffle. Not an insult to it at all, just a testament to the show's quality. Episode 102A, The Fast and the Phineas. Phineas and Ferb participate in a motor car race. Dr. Doofenshmirtz plots to deflate everything in the tri-state area. I really like this one. It's 4 stars off the bat. There's a great energy to this particular one, especially during the race. I love the Go Go Phineas song. It's one of the first really catchy songs that I truly remember from this show. My favorite parts were actually... One was when Isabella called Phineas's helmet manly. I don't know why, it was so insignificant, but the line delivery just made me laugh on both ends. And then there was Isabella and Gretchen engaging in engineering babble. You could tell that the writers writing this probably had no idea what they were talking about, but the delivery of the lines from the voice actresses, I'm sitting here thinking, do they even know what they're talking about?
It's like we're smart, but we're not.
It's just great stuff. And the Doof plot was also great. Like the China plan, this one was also mostly straightforward. But it was a little bit more creative, and I liked the jokes better, especially the one where they deflate the beach ball. And Candace's reaction at her failure to bust the boys at the end was just beautiful. By the by, did you know that Candace was once my least favorite character? That's no longer true, but it was at one point. Also, notice the fun fact over there. The funny thing is, those characters are drawn to resemble Dan and Swampy, but they're not voiced by Dan and Swampy. That's just weird to me. Whatever, I digress. Episode 102B, Lawn Gnome Beach Party of Terror. Phineas and Ferb build a beach party in their backyard. Dr. Doofenshmirtz plots to steal all lawn gnomes in the tri-state area. Every Phineas and Ferb fan in the community cites this as a classic. And while I'm not quite going that far, objection! It's still pretty good. I enjoy it. It's one of my favorites of season 1. It's a simple premise, a beach party, but so many cool elements incorporated, like Phineas winning the surfing contest. I loved the judges' jokes, especially when the last judge had to rethink Einstein's theory of relativity. That's just wonderful. I love that. The no bullying, no yodeling gag was hilarious. One of those jokes that seemingly comes out of nowhere, and then they immediately give it context, and it's just perfect. And that quote over there makes me laugh every single time. It's one of the most illogical things you'll hear, and yet in this universe, it just seems to fit. I also love the Doofenshmirtz plot in this episode. Apart from the great jokes, especially the one with the remote control, we have the first really great Doofenshmirtz backstory of the series, and it's a classic. Who could forget the famous lawn gnome backstory? So it not only gives this extra layer of complexity to this episode, but it also provides a lot of hilarious jokes, not just for this episode, but for the rest of the series. Ultimately, I decided to go with 5 stars. I totally understand people seeing this as a classic or as the go-to episode, one that they automatically think of when they hear the show's name. I don't go quite that far, but it's still a nice nostalgia trip. There's still a lot of great stuff, and I love the Backyard Beach song. It's just wonderful. 103A, The Magnificent Few. Phineas and Ferb host a cattle drive at a dude ranch. Dr. Doofenshmirtz creates a helmet that controls termites. This one is good. Not great, not bad by any stretch, just good. It's another one of those where nothing is wrong with it, but it doesn't suck me in as bad as other episodes do. I did kind of like seeing Isabella describe how to milk a cow. Her facial expressions throughout the whole thing sold me.
I just earned my milking badge, and it was so easy. All you do is squeeze and pull and squeeze and pull and squeeze and pull and squeeze and pull.
Stop talking!
My favorite part, though, was the scary wolf puppet exchange with Candace and the store clerk. I don't even know what to say about that one. That's just hilarious in its own right. And honestly, pretty much anything Doofenshmirtz says now makes me laugh. But aside from that, it doesn't really grab me. Not to mention that the show would do something cooler with cows later on in the episode Moon Farm. So, 3 stars. Episode 103B, Swinter. Phineas and Ferb create Swinter, a mixture of winter and summer. Dr. Doofenshmirtz plots to melt all the chocolate in the tri-state area. Sometimes you get an episode that has a really simple premise but brings a lot of charm to it, and I think this is one of those episodes. The idea of seasons changing to benefit oneself is nothing new, and the show would later do it again with the concept of fall, but this was the episode that really started it, and it puts a really creative and all-around nice spin to it. They make the weather colder not just for themselves but for the neighborhood, so they can enjoy it too. And I really love the Swinter song. I love the composition, I love the music, I love the singing. This is the first time we hear Isabella sing, and even though it's good, this song doesn't do her justice. She would get her chance later on in the series. I kind of liked Candace and Vanessa interacting, even though for the sake of the plot, it was pretty much pointless. My favorite parts were Doof explaining to Perry his scheme, and then explaining it again because he thinks Perry didn't hear him. And then when Perry breaks out, Doof delivers this amazing line, "You ate your own hiney?" What is it about Doofenshmirtz that makes his line delivery so perfect? This is a 5-star episode. I keep coming back to this episode a lot when I'm bored or in just need of a kick. 104A, Are You My Mummy? Phineas and Ferb go in search of a real-life mummy. Dr. Doofenshmirtz plots to create beachfront property. My favorite part was both of the manager's assistant required jokes. And that's really kind of it. It's another one where nothing is wrong with it, but nothing really entices me either. The mummy song is pretty nice in the episode, and Phineas's quote over there did get me to laugh, but for the Phineas and Ferb side, that's really it. Even the Doofenshmirtz plot is not the strongest one. The only thing I really sort of recall is the trap Doofenshmirtz used, a bubble. There was some clever banter on his end. There were enough funny things in this episode that made me glad I saw it, but it's not really the greatest either, even though there's nothing really wrong with it. 3 stars. I wasn't bored by this, but it's not one that I obsessively love either. It's weird that this premise was one that didn't excite me. It might be because it wasn't an actual mummy, but that's supposed to be the joke, so it's kind of a catch-22, I suppose. Honestly, I think more of the problem is, compared to the episodes we get in seasons 2, 3, and 4, a lot of the first season ones look a lot weaker in comparison, but again, this is such a good show. The standards are really high. A weaker episode for this show like this one would probably be a really strong episode for a lesser show. So it's not necessarily the episode's fault, it's just the show's standards are so high for me. 104B, Flop Stars. Phineas and Ferb create a one-hit wonder band and hijack Candace's stardom dreams. Dr. Doofenshmirtz creates a giant building-shaped robot. 6 stars, easy. So many associate this as a classic, and I can't really argue with them. This episode is really about as good as it gets with this show. Did you know that the song Gitchy Gitchy Goo was so popular with Disney executives that they asked Dan and Swampy to write one for each episode the rest of the way? The rest is history. 450 plus songs later, and the impact is immeasurable. The song itself is really fun, and even in its campy catchiness, it's still a great listen. But I'll be honest, compared to many of the songs I've heard that are coming up in the series, this one gets lost in the shuffle. It's a testament to the amazing stuff to come, more so than it is a testament to the quality of this song. This song is great. And this episode's satire of the pop industry is truly a marvel. So we find out that Linda, the mother, was once a one-hit wonder herself. And for some reason, that idea is just utterly hilarious. So Phineas and Ferb try to mimic that. And it's not just that they follow the one-hit wonder lifestyle step by step, but it's the passion that they put into it and the commitment they show to getting every step. Phineas's diva tantrum took the cake. Really, the line delivery is absolutely perfect. It is a perfect mixture of acting, so you know he's not really being serious, but convincing anger so that the Hollywood executive buys it. It's amazing. I'm surprised this show hasn't won an Emmy, to be honest, and I haven't even touched the Doofenshmirtz plot yet. So Doofenshmirtz turns his own building into a giant robot. For reasons. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's worth a laugh, but there's not much to it more than that. Luckily, they make up for it with a lot of jokes. And my absolute favorite is when Doofenshmirtz is offering Perry a salad and he puts pepper on it, and through a misunderstanding, Doof puts so much on that Perry is able to sneeze it onto Doof in order to escape. You can't make this stuff up. I don't think this plot was quite as rewarding as the Phineas plot, but the jokes made up for it. I really don't have any other complaints about this episode. It's just wonderful. Especially the ending scene, which I won't spoil, but if you love the show and you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. Episode 105A, Raging Bully. Phineas and Buford thumb wrestle. Dr. Doofenshmirtz plots to brainwash people into attending his birthday party. This is another one of those episodes where I really like the Doofenshmirtz story more than the Phineas and Ferb story. And that's not to say the Phineas and Ferb story is bad. There are a lot of good stuff in it. I like the montage of Phineas training with Evander Holyfield. Oh yeah, Evander Holyfield guest starred in this episode. Go figure. I liked the actual thumb wrestling match. I loved how they made it into this grand spectacle, while at the same time keeping it so small and simple. It's pretty hard to do. I absolutely loved when Verb Vulcan nerve pinched Buford at the end, and that quote over there is like 10 kinds of funny. While it's not the strongest or even the funniest story, it still has a lot to keep me coming back. Now the Doofenshmirtz story, that's hilarious. First you have his absurd birthday backstory, which is both incredibly tragic and incredibly hilarious at the same time. Then his invention, the Slavinator, which not only is very diabolical, but ridiculous too. I mean, he has to strap this giant keyboard to his own body just to make the device function. God knows what that's doing to a slouch. So anyway, this one gets 4 stars. The plots aren't quite the strongest, but there's a lot of funny jokes, and there's enough to sustain them. 105B, Lights, Candace, Action. Candace lands a starring role in her favorite play, directed by Phineas and Ferb. Dr. Doofenshmirtz forgoes evil in lieu of cheesemaking. I actually really like the Phineas and Ferb story in this one. The setup is great. Candace mocks Phineas and Ferb's tiny little play movie set, then lands the role that she's always wanted, only to find out that Phineas and Ferb somehow landed the directing job on said production. Then they change everything about the movie. The production is a disaster, but somehow it all comes together, only for Deus Ex Machina to intervene and ruin it. I also kind of love how Phineas and Ferb's website is basically one of the most popular things of all time. How many hits did the agent say it had? 176 million? Why hasn't Channel Awesome hired them yet? I thought a lot of the jokes they told here worked, but there were also a couple that, I admit, just didn't sit right. For one, what kind of joke is dropping a bunch of bathroom pipes that are mistaken for props? I just don't get it. What's the joke? Also, Phineas leaving the lens cap on. I could see that working if it was another character like Buford, but with Phineas, I don't really know what it is, but it just didn't work for me. I also loved how at the end, what they ended up uploading was an exaggerated replay of Candace's mockery from earlier. It's glorious. Now for the Doof plot. Simply put, I love it. Right away, you get the sense that they're not going to take this so seriously. You just know that Doof's not going to go good. So you're just left wondering what jokes they're going to tell. Literally, the first one set the mood. Doofenshmirtz actually getting annoyed at Perry and forcing him to pay for the door he breaks down. It's one of those jokes that turns out so much funnier than it has any right to be, but the line delivery makes it work. So Doofenshmirtz claims he's given up evil and turned to cheesemaking, and so he builds an age accelerator in order to age a very delicate and rare cheese so he can enjoy it. Unfortunately, once he turns his back, Perry devours it, finding it too inviting. Because of course. And then the charade is dropped and Doof is back to evil. Duh. If you were expecting anything less, you need to watch a different show. And then the ending shows the device exploding and both of them turning really old and ugly. Only for Perry to reveal that he was apparently wearing an age accelerator proof suit. Yeah, I still don't get it. So apparently Perry's a mind reader now and knew exactly what was going to happen, which means he also knew Doof wasn't serious about turning good, right? Which would mean that he ate the cheese just to dick him around. And it's not important. It doesn't ruin anything for me in the grand scheme of things. It's just weird stuff I tend to think about when I think really hard about these episodes. Anyway, this episode gets 4 stars. The jokes were great, the plots were simple but effective. One interesting thing, though, is that there wasn't a song in this episode either. Yeah, the order in which Disney initially aired this first season was weird. So there were episodes in production order that came after Flop Stars that didn't have a song in them.
Space is warped and time is bendable.
Only a couple, but yeah. 106A, Get That Bigfoot Out of My Face. Phineas, Ferb, Candace, and friends encounter Bigfoot. Dr. Doofenshmirtz's date night is interrupted by Agent P. I think this one is okay. Just okay. I had thought about giving it 2 stars, but honestly I think the Doofenshmirtz plot saved it. The Phineas and Ferb plot is basically a day at a camp for them with Grandma Betty Jo and Grandpa Clyde. The kids enjoy nature and Candace is a miserable snob. Not much really going on. That is until the ending, where after Ferb scares Candace with a fake Bigfoot, another fake Bigfoot scares the kids. And then it's revealed that it was apparently the work of Candace and Grandma Jo, as well as her apparently identical twin Lorraine, who lives in a closet and comes out only once a year apparently.
No. Just no. 101 Dalmatians of no.
Yeah, some of these jokes come right the fuck out of nowhere. I think that can work sometimes. I just don't think this time it worked. It's not really gripping. The Doof plot, however, does make up for some of it. The plot is simple. Doof is having a date night and it's thwarted by Perry. But A, it is entirely not Perry's fault at all, and B, it is completely by chance. See, when his date, voiced by Sandra Oh, arrives, Perry goes into his mindless pet form, where he stays for the remainder of the episode. She completely fawns over him while poor Perry is doing literally nothing, and poor Doof is left as a third wheel. Then at the end, he gives that hilarious line. So you have an okay Phineas and Ferb story mixed with a really funny yet simple Doof story. It all rounds out to 3 stars. 106B. Tree to get ready. Phineas and Ferb remodel Candace's old treehouse. Dr. Doofenshmirtz plots revenge against his brother Roger. So you know how I said that many of these episodes will be a weaker Phineas and Ferb story with a stronger Doofenshmirtz story? Well, the funny thing is, this episode, it's the exact opposite. The Doof plot is weaker, and the Phineas and Ferb plot is stronger. And both are really good. The Phineas and Ferb plot entails them fixing up Candace's old treehouse, while she and her friend Stacy are playing video games. But instead of just giving it a makeover, they turn it into a freaking treehouse robot. Because, of course. And they do the same to theirs so they can have a treehouse robot fight that takes them all across town. It's pretty out there, and it's a lot of fun. I also loved how there's such a good camaraderie between the parties. In a lesser show, you would take this plot and make it go, one party takes it too far and shows malice and then has to apologize. But this show doesn't. There's rarely times in this show, in this series, where I feel like Candace legitimately hates her brothers. And that's really good writing on this one. There is so rarely any real animosity between any of these characters. It's a nice breath of fresh air. And it all culminates at the end when they arrive back. This episode came long before Candace started accepting the idea of having fun with her brothers' big ideas, but I imagine if this episode had been written in a later season, she would have admitted to Linda without hesitation that she had fun. As for the Doof plot, like I said, it's weaker here, but still pretty good. See, Doofenshmirtz's brother Roger is receiving the key to the city. This was before he came mayor. He decides to get revenge by enslaving a bunch of pigeons to poop on him on command. It's a much funnier setup than it sounds. I like the witty banter that comes from Vanessa, who literally couldn't care less about her dad's evil plan. And in the end, his plan is foiled, and Doofenshmirtz is left being pooped on by hundreds of pigeons that have turned on him. It's worth 5 stars, no doubt. Oh, and John O'Hurley. Great choice to voice Roger Doofenshmirtz. How is it that this guy seems to use the exact same voice and inflections for every one of his voice acting roles, and yet each and every character he plays is distinct and unique from each other? I wasn't aware that was possible. 107. It's about time. Phineas and Ferb repair a broken time machine and travel back to the dinosaurs. Dr. Doofenshmirtz gets a new nemesis to replace Agent P. So I'm going to give the rating first and then explain my reasoning. I give It's About Time 4 stars. Now before you start the pitchforks, hear me out. I like both plots. The plot with Phineas and Ferb fixing a time machine is pretty nice, but I also feel like it's wasted potential. We go only to the age of the dinosaurs, and then the plot becomes them trying to find some way back home. It's not as interesting as it sounds when you get right down to it. That's not to say it's bad. I really love Candace's freakout and the message that Isabella and the Fireside Girls read from Phineas back at the museum. That was pretty funny too. Not to mention I love Lawrence's bit at the end. Fossils! Da da da. I have no idea why, but that part always gets me laughing. Oh, and the bit with Candace getting kicked out of the museum, that was pretty good too. But when push comes to shove, the plot really doesn't go anywhere. As for the Doof plot, it's funnier, but in a strange way it's also stupider. Okay, so Doofenshmirtz finds a new nemesis to battle and essentially dumps Perry. I'm assuming that this is trying to satirize a standard relationship drama, and on the surface that is kind of funny how this arc in the show about an animal secret agent fighting a guy wearing a pharmacist outfit could satirize relationship drama. But it almost feels like this episode kind of takes it too seriously at times. For example, after Perry is dumped by Doofenshmirtz. The song When We Didn't Get Along starts playing, and it's a legitimately sad summer musical number. I actually ended up feeling sorry for Perry after it was over, and saying that just feels weird to me. And then later there's a song from Doof's perspective called My Nemesis that shows him actually enjoying being enemies with Perry. Yeah, they have a weird thing going on. It does get better as the series progresses, but seeing it this early, it's very jarring and very strange at the same time. But the bottom line is he misses Perry, and then through things ends up breaking up with Peter the Panda, only to rectify things with Perry on a TV show that's clearly satirizing Dr. Phil. And then a no-bars fight breaks out between all the animal agents and the evil scientist sitting in the audience. It's all incredibly stupid, but a lot of it is stupid in the right way. While I don't think every piece of this episode works for both plots, I thoroughly had fun with both stories. And if nothing else, the episode did introduce the concept of time travel, which would be later used in the series. So you've got a mixed bag, but overall, really good stuff. Episode 108A, Jerk de Soleil. Phineas and Ferb create a backyard circus. Dr. Doofenshmirtz plots to raise the pitch of everyone's voice to make his seem lower. This one is just good. It's not too memorable, but there's nothing really wrong with it either. 3 stars. It's a simple premise, and that doesn't necessarily mean bad. I do think there are a lot of good jokes here, but not necessarily enough to justify the simple plot. I did like the part where Buford's circus act kind of gets taken away from him, so he haphazardly tries to do it himself and gets none of the satisfaction. And I suppose the song Evil Boys is pretty good. Dan does a great job as the Candace while inflicted with parsnips voice. That also comes back into play in a later episode. But honestly, beyond that initial fulfillment, the song doesn't do much for me. Actually, the song kind of makes me a tad uncomfortable. I mean, the song is called Evil Boys. I know it's supposed to be comedic, but even in the proper context, it could still come off as jarring and uncomfortable. Remember, I used to really, really hate Candace's character. I wasn't sure where they were going to take her character as the series went on. Obviously, they didn't take her to any bad places, which I'm glad, but still, even in a satirical sense, the song doesn't sit that well with me. Not helping the fact that it is a deep voice. That being said, it doesn't really ruin anything from the episode for me, and the idea of her voice going that deep for an allergy attack is pretty good. It's just kind of weird and jarring for me. 108B, Toy to the World. Phineas and Ferb create a Perry toy. Dr. Doofenshmirtz plots to create toll booths to scam the tri-state area out of money. Not a lot for me to say about this one. I liked the little trapdoor joke they used at the toy company. I thought that was great. The brick song was pretty funny too because it's so simple. The setup is also simple, but they get a lot of gags out of it. I love when Phineas is listing off everything the static Perry toy can do without the toy actually doing anything. I like how the episode points out that Candace is being paid under minimum wage. Oh, and her "I feel like number 2" line is just classic. Oh, and J.K. Simmons as the head of the toy company. Pretty good knowledge to have, especially when you consider his later history with Disney. Not only as Napoleon the Bug in Doof 101 and the Alka Files, but also Fort Pines in Gravity Falls. So this episode gets 4 stars overall. Episode 109, One Good Scare Ought to Do It. Phineas builds a haunted house to scare away Isabel's hiccups. Dr. Doofenshmirtz plots to destroy his old mentor's hideout. Candace tries to enjoy a stay at Jeremy's house in spite of his little sister Susie's efforts. This is one of the first episodes, in production order, to put a little more of an emphasis on the relationship between Isabella and Phineas, as throughout most of the second half, Phineas is seen mostly with her. I won't go into a huge argument here about that, because there is an episode coming way down the line that'll be perfect stomping ground for that, but I will say it's always nice when the episodes do that, but they also don't put so much of a romantic twist on it. It's just really sweet. She has a problem, and he wants to do what he can to help fix it. Here, it's hiccups, so he builds this gigantic haunted house to hopefully scare them out of her. At the end, it succeeds, sort of. She's scared after she witnesses him falling potentially to his doom, but is saved by her fellow Fireside Girls troupe. Her little quip,
Now that was scary.
always flutters my heart a little. Plus, the attractions within the haunted house itself are pretty good. I love how Baljeet's fear is literally him failing a test, and he's dressed up literally like a failed test. I also love how Buford admits to being terrified of little Susie Johnson, and Phineas basically has none of it. The plot was riddled with great jokes and sweet moments. I also really LOL'd at the mariachi tree at the beginning. And in my opinion, it's one of the best examples as to why the Phineas and Isabella relationship works, and why it had so much untapped potential that the show decided not to use. Again, that's more for a later review. And also, the song during a haunted house ride is pretty good. As for the Candace plot, I'd say it's probably the weakest of the 3, but it's still fairly nice. She has a quote-unquote date with Jeremy at his house, and of course hijinks ensues, mostly related to his little sister Susie trying to sabotage the date, intentionally. To be honest, I don't like her character that much, but she didn't really bother me one way or the other, mostly because she was an on and off again character. The best part was the ending bit where Candace attempts to show Linda the haunted house, and every time she ends up inadvertently insulting Baljean. It was great comedy, and Linda's expressions only sold it better. And finally, the Doof plot, which is just wonderful. Doofenshmirtz reveals his plan to destroy the hideout of his longtime evil mentor, Kevin Destruction, when he could not, in his words, set fire to the sun. I don't even know what I can say about that. When he says that, there's this dramatic music and backdrop that go behind him. And they do the joke twice. That makes it even better. Self-awareness in the right amount can go a long way for a show. So Doof traps Perry, but Perry fights back by hiding the keys to Doof's ship under his webbed feet. And at no point does Doof express any interest in checking underneath his feet. Now, eventually he convinces Perry to tell him where his keys are by letting him go. Now, that's funny enough, but then you throw in that hilarious quote right there, and you've got a masterpiece of sap. And then after Doof gets himself situated in his ship and takes off, he does an inventory check. Leave it to Doof to wait until after he was airborne to check if he was missing anything. And the jokes there are just fantastic. My golf clubs! I don't even play golf! It's amazing how good they make his jokes sometimes. The only reason I'm giving this episode 5 stars instead of 6 is, while I do enjoy each of the plots in their own way, I feel like the Candace plot brings the episode as a whole down. Honestly, I couldn't care less for the bits with Susie, and really, if you cut out the Candace plot, nothing's really different. We didn't need to see it play out, though I'm not complaining that I didn't. I am happy with what I got. It's right on the edge of 6. But I'm giving it 5. There was only one thing that I didn't bring up in this review, and that was the infamous giant floating baby head. But really, if you're a fan of the show, do I even need to bring it up?
No!
No! Well, no.
110A, A Hard Day's Night. Phineas and Ferb host a medieval tournament while visiting their grandparents in England. Candace tries to impress a boy. Dr. Doofenshmirtz attends an evil con. So if you're a fan, then you already know what my favorite part of this episode is, because it's also your favorite part. The part where Doofenshmirtz is lit on fire by his own robot dragon. The line delivery was perfect too, especially the line, "Well, that was a stupid design." It's literally my favorite joke from the entire show. Not even kidding. Unfortunately, that's about it in terms of great stuff from the episode. I wasn't too impressed with it. It's an episode about jousting, which isn't bad, and they do sneak in some good bits here and there, but the Candace stuff was tedious and insufferable, because we already know we're likely never going to see this character again anyway, so what's even the point? Plus, the song really doesn't even grab me either. I bet the Doof plot really makes up for a lot of this episode's shortcomings. He attends an evil con and meets his idol, Dr. Lloyd Wexler, voiced by Tim Curry, of all people, who turns out to just be Perry in disguise, but that only goes so far. I had to give this one 2 stars. It's not bad. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's not enough jokes in here to justify a 3-star rating either. The plot isn't really too compelling, and the Candace plot is so tedious and pointless that it really just bored me. 110B, Brobot. Phineas and Ferb build robot versions of themselves. Dr. Doofenshmirtz plots to erase embarrassing messages he left on his date's answering machine. The community loves this episode. It's one of the first to be voted by beloved staff member Aliki Theophilopoulos, and it's hard to fault them. It's really a great episode. 4 stars. The concept is simple. Phineas and Ferb want more big ideas, so they create robot versions of themselves to fulfill that. Hijinks ensue. I love when they showed us Candace's panic room. I thought that was hilarious. I loved the song Finidroids and Furbots, and that money quote from Phineas is easily my favorite. I even like that there's even a mini character arc for them, that they realize, what's the point of all this great stuff if we're not the ones doing it? And it's not in your face either. It is mostly subtle. That is until the end when they become sentient and try to kill them, only to be picked up by a passing-by Santa Claus.
Objection!
Yeah, I don't get it either. And that's after Santa Claus meddled in the Doof plot as well. Okay, so Doofenshmirtz becomes a little too clingy to his most recent date and leaves a bunch of messages on her answering machine and then wants to delete them so he doesn't come off as clingy. It's not evil in the traditional sense. Hell, it's not even evil by Doof standards. And I love how the show doesn't hesitate to point that out. The best part about this is Perry trying to stop him despite this not being truly evil. I even love Doof's quip. Well, as a tailor would say, suit yourself. It's so undisputably corny and yet entirely intentional. I love it. The only thing I could possibly nitpick is that, the Santa Claus thing. I don't get it either. I could see people hating it as something stupid, and I'm not about to defend it, but I don't think it's that bad. It's just something I don't get. 111A, Mom's Birthday. Candace's attempt to make Mom's birthday the best birthday ever are inadvertently thwarted by Phineas and Ferb. Dr. Doofenshmirtz plots to shrink down everything he hates. I was genuinely split on what to give this episode. On the one hand, the Phineas and Ferb plot is alright. It's nothing too special, but it is a rather sweet feeling watching them go all out to make their mother happy on her birthday. And it was especially nice seeing Candace try a lot of things, fail, but then ultimately get her way in the end. And that song is pretty nice too. On the other hand, the Doofenshmirtz plot was absolutely hilarious, and most of the jokes worked. You'll see on the slide I included 2 quotes instead of just one. The first one is self-explanatory, and the second one, from the delivery to the writing to the timing, it doesn't get the praise it deserves. It has a lot of great jokes, and once again plays with its self-awareness, especially when Doofenshmirtz points out that he's done the innature thing so many times, which is why his invention this time is called Shrinksperia. Overall, I give it 4 stars. There's enough to satisfy in both the comedy and emotion department. 111B, journeying to the center of Candace. Phineas and Ferb accidentally shrink themselves and take a trip inside Candace. Dr. Doofenshmirtz's scheme specifically threatens Phineas and Ferb. I'm not gonna lie, this episode does not do a lot for me. I came out of this episode just shrugging. I didn't find much of this that entertaining. I kind of liked it when Candace got a sandwich named after her at the end, and that Doof quote is utterly hilarious, and will forever have this episode to thank for establishing the hilarious paradox of Candace's favorite food being grilled cheese, despite her dairy allergy, which the creative team didn't even realize until a Times Talk interview in 2011, by the by. And the fact that it was a little kid that pointed that out just makes it even more hilarious.
You can't be this stupid! You can't! I mean, you literally just stated out loud why this movie can't work!
But that's about it. Hell, not even the song stands out. 2 out of 6. I do kind of appreciate that Doofenshmirtz and Harry do mix it up a little in their plot, not just in real life, but within their own canon too. Once again, self-awareness. It's great. Even in an episode like this, an episode that I'm saying is not good, there's still great stuff to be found in it. That's why I love the show so much. 112A, Away Runway. Phineas and Ferb start a fashion trend. Candace attempts to become the newest Gaston Lemode fashion model. Dr. Doofenshmirtz creates clones of himself so he can avoid waiting in lines. You would think that an episode focusing on fashion would not be my cup of tea, and it doesn't entirely stand out for me, but I still enjoyed it. I love how for this one, it was Candace that gave them the inspiration, albeit inadvertently. I love how we go through various stages of fashion glamour throughout this 11 minutes. Hell, I think the episode actually takes place in real time. And of course, the pencil neck jokes. That always gets me. The Doof stuff is good. It's one of those where the idea, for me, works better than the actual execution. I really would have loved to see him do something with the copies of himself that he made, other than just stand in line. I know it's a joke, but it does feel a little bit like wasted potential. There are some good jokes, though, like when Doof brings out some failed copies, he says, "That great line over there." Always hilarious. And also the way his plan was foiled. When he tries to delete a failed copy, he accidentally hits the delete all button on his remote, causing all the copies to disappear. I think it balances out overall to 3 stars. 112B, I scream, you scream. Phineas and Ferb make the biggest ice cream maker for Isabella after her tonsils are removed. Vanessa attempts to convince her mother that her father is evil. We all know this episode mainly for the song, Busted. And Candace and Vanessa really do harmonize well with each other. And I also love the fact that Phineas and Ferb were willing to go to extreme lengths just to get Isabella all the ice cream she could eat. While also happy that it ended up being just a simple sundae. I liked how in this episode Vanessa mirrored Candace in how she tried to get her mother to see that Doofenshmirtz was evil. Although as the series went on, we'd see that Charlene was right and that Doof really isn't evil. Oh, and the absolute best was when Doofenshmirtz was showing off his doctor's diploma, only for Vanessa to point out that it was a fake, that apparently he paid for. You don't get much better than that. I guess that's where his alimony went too. 4 stars. Not really much else to say here. 113A, it's a mud world. Phineas and Ferb build a monster truck track in the backyard to help Candace learn to parallel park. Dr. Doofenshmirtz creates a new line of monster trucks to eliminate the competition. So this would be the first episode to really focus on Candace's desire to get her learner's permit and then her license. I'm sort of split. On the one hand, I really liked how Lawrence and Candace interact with each other. I like it better than the Linda and Candace interactions, that's for sure. It's very clear that there's a great deal of love for both of them. But on the other hand, it's not really that funny. Something like a later episode, Bubble Boys, that shows Candace's struggles to maintain her cool and failings with Linda was certainly funnier, even though I feel like there's more animosity there. The interactions with Candace and Lawrence, they're sweeter, but less funny. And unfortunately, the Doof plot suffers too. Sure, he has some good lines and his plan was ridiculously over the top, and I loved Isabella's TV promotion where she used an absurdly deep voice and high energy to promote the track, but that's really kind of it. Not even the guest star stands out. Billy Ray Cyrus. 2 stars. 13B, The Ballad of Badbeard. Phineas and Ferb take their friends on a treasure hunt. Dr. Doofenshmirtz moves into a new lair on a deserted island. Really, my only significant complaint about this one has nothing to do with the episode itself. My complaint is that this wasn't paired up with Get That Bigfoot Out of My Face, since those two take place at Camp Phineas and Ferb. I don't understand how something like that can happen. Heck, you could have done the gimmick they did with Phineas and Ferb Hawaiian Vacation before Phineas and Ferb Hawaiian Vacation.
Hey, studio executives, I have an idea for a movie.
A movie or a post?
Well, a poster, of course.
Go on.
I see Arnold Schwarzenegger with children.
We've seen that.
A baby.
That's old.
He's pregnant.
Go on.
Really, if that's my only complaint, the episode did really well. Seeing Candace drown into the depths of insanity after the orange moss was fantastic. It was a great segue into letting the show get away with her seeing Perry as a secret agent without having to relocate him. Also the line, "Why do my nostrils whisper to me?" Great stuff. One of the truly great what-the-hell moments in television. The story about Phineas and Ferb fulfilling Grandpa Clyde's dream of finding the lost treasure of Badbeard is also great. I love the satire they do of traditional pirate movies. I love the Badbeard song. And I love that the treasure is literally fake beards. Great setup, great jokes, and a nice payoff. The doof plot isn't quite as strong here, but it's still got nice funny stuff. I liked the joke about the crocodiles both being named Susan. How do you tell them apart? I liked Candace, even in a delusional state, mistaking him for a pharmacist. You would think at some point in the near future he would decide to change its outfit to avoid those comparisons, but I digress. And then the twist at the end where it turns out it's blue moss, not orange moss, that makes you go cuckoo. And the talking zebra that haunts Candace's dreams. You know, for all the talk the giant floating baby head gets, I'm surprised nobody else mentions the zebra that haunts Candace's nightmares. Anyway, 5 stars. It's not among my top favorites of the season, but it's definitely very good.